And, you know, so flash forward 35 years. I'm doing Abu Ghraib for the New Yorker. Get a call from a mother. And she calls because her daughter was in a military police unit. Now, the military police people in Abu Ghraib, you see, weren't military police in the sense that they were trained they were traffic cops. They were in a reserve unit. They were based in West Virginia, on the border, Wheeling, West Virginia, the border between Virginia and West Virginia. We're talking about a very these are people who went into reserves to get money maybe for more beer or to go to beauty school. You know, this was one of the people, one of the 7 charged was a night manager of a pizza parlor. This was a very unsophisticated rural group of reservists who ended up in the war, ended up in a very sophisticated prison with a sophisticated culture. And if you think those kids understood about the Koran and shaming people by undressing them and photographing them, well, you take it from me, they didn't. That was something that was brought in from above. They were told what to do. But anyway, the mother calls me because her daughter had come back, and here's the chronology that's so interesting. And this is why to Gonzalez to endorse him as Attorney General without at least a bitter argument would be I think, sort of against a lot of things we in America stand for, really. Because the pattern is this. In last August, in 2003, the UN got blown up. And we, in Washington, Karl Rove and others, it was a year before an election, they realized there was something going on, that this wasn't just nickel-dime opposition, this was serious stuff. And they had no intelligence about it. The Jordanian embassy, where we run all of our spook operations out of, was attacked. Oil was attacked, water was attacked, more electrical stuff was attacked, all in August. So they decided they have to put the screws on the prisoners, get more intelligence. So the kids began undressing Arab men and doing what they did is equivalent to torture. They began doing this in September, October, November, December, unabated. This was the night crew in the prison. They were the night guys. Their job was to keep people up and keep them going. For the day crew, which was going to do the interrogation, their job was to keep these guys exhausted. So they, as somebody said, got creative, you know, with the feathers and the stuff, whatever, and the photographs, which were part of the game. And this goes on unabated until January 2004, when one of the kids in the unit does that amazing thing. Some of you remember that great study, was it at Yale, where they had students come in and apply torture to electrical prods to people, and they kept on, you tell the student in some sort of simulated test, put more juice on it, and almost without exception, 99% of people kept on juicing it up so that people were more and more shocked. Very few stood up and said, this is crazy. This kid said, this is crazy. He went to the internal police with the CD-ROM photographs, the famous photographs. And so in January 2002, this year, the Army begins an investigation. By middle of the month, Rumsfeld's told, because it's serious, he tells the president, this is all stuff he said in testimony, he tells the president. So by January 20th, this year, everybody knows there's a big problem. What happens? CBS gets the photographs, chickens out, so I get into the story. I and CBS go public with it. I have the Taguba report. This is in early May. Between January and early May, what did my government do when they learned there was a serious problem of this kind of unbelievable abuse that was per se devastating to everything we thought we were trying to do in terms of building democracy? Nothing. Nada. Except prosecute the 7 bad seeds, or begin the prosecution of the 7 bad seeds. That's all they did. After it gets public, oh my God, there's gambling on the premises, they assigned the generals, they're going to start re-educating, we're going to improve conditions. But before it became public, they did nothing. Do you need to know anything more about who's responsible for what? Of course Rumsfeld didn't know what was going on in Abu Ghraib, but did they understand what was going on without? Yes. And let me tell you, when we're all done with the prison story, it's going to make Guantanamo, is going to make Andersonville, the southern prison in the south that the North ran, and also the prison in Elmira, New York, which was a hellhole too, about very little was written. It's going to make it look like amateur land. It's going to, what we've done to those people in those prisons. In any case, March of this year, as this woman tells me, she calls me up and she says, she finds me and I call her back and she says, my daughter was in that MP unit. And what happened is she came back in March and she was strange. She'd been over there 9 months. And she came back and she was just newly married before she left. She was a reservist. And she said she left her husband And she left the family, and she moved in by herself. She said, I would call it clinical depression, but this is a woman who doesn't really understand or think that way. I mean, this is a working class family whose kid, a very religious Catholic family, and she couldn't understand what was going on with her daughter. Her daughter was just going off the screen. And then she said to me, and then she began to, every weekend, she began to start getting big black tattoos all over her body. Began to tattoo her body. She said, black, all over every part of her body, legs, arms, torso. And I didn't understand it. So when your stories about Abu Ghraib came out, I went to her, knocked on her door, and she wasn't speaking to me. I said, were you in Abu Ghraib? And she slammed the door. And she said I then went back, and I'd given her a laptop to go to Iraq with when her reserve unit was called up, because it had a DVD, you could watch movies with it, which is, new generational thing. And she said she'd left it when she came home because it was mine. And she said, so I thought I'd just go to it and just, start using it again and clean out the files. We're not talking about this is a lady who's not aware of the unconscious. And, she didn't know that she was looking for what she found. And she said, I started going through the files, and there was a file marked Iraq, and out came 1,000 pictures. You saw one of them, this picture of the man, the prison with 2 dogs, snarling Alsatian shepherds about 2 feet on each side of him. The New Yorker published, I'm sure many of you remembered, you've seen the photograph, sort of iconic picture. It was, the equivalent of getting a murder when you sent off a good boy. And, it's something no mother should see, and no child should see or participate in. And what happened, of course, is the dogs did attack the man, and a lot of blood. At the New Yorker, we publish, I think, very sanely, how much it's not about. The concern was only about Arab mentality. One picture is enough. That's enough. Everybody will know what's going on. You don't have to be explicit, because in the actual writing, I told what happened. You don't have to show this scene. I'll leave it for you to decide where he was bitten, but where the blood was from, I don't know. Anyway. And so on that level, we're dealing with an enormous atrocity. And, yes, the soldier, the Marine who seemingly did an unprovoked crazy thing the other day in Fallujah. But I come away from working with the My Lai kids a lot. And I'll tell you what I ended up thinking when I was done with all these kids at My Lai who did all those horrible things, that the kids there were as much victims as the people they shot. And so, in a way, I say to focus on him, forget it. It's a much bigger picture. What's he doing there? Why is he there? How could you be fighting a war when everybody hates you and you can't win it? I mean, those are impossible conditions. And so, I don't want to mitigate it, but we just have to understand that we have really put ourselves in an amazing hole here without any immediate, obvious ways of getting out of it. I cannot help you out of it. My colleagues in the press corps cannot help you out of it. There's going to be no magic story that's going to turn it. It's going to turn on external events and the ability of our one-time allies in the world to maybe create changes. I don't think it can come from inside, because these are people that are incapable of changing course. They are going to stay the course. They are completely committed, and as many body bags as it takes, this guy is going to let them come. And that's pretty scary.